we're getting sales, so we don't need to worry about who our ideal customer profile is. That is absolutely not true, and I'm going to talk you through why that is. Hello and welcome to Engage and Thrive, also known as EAT, your coffee catch-up with me, your host, Taelon, where we will go through common problems and hurdles that come up in business, marketing and advertising and try and demystify them. I know firsthand how complicated and confusing it can seem with all the different acronyms and all the things to do in business. So let me try and help you be better in business. First things first, let's start with grabbing a coffee. So to start off by saying this is a special episode, a bonus episode being episode 60. So it will actually be an extended episode of 60 minutes. I know that might seem quite intense. So obviously grab your coffee, grab your lunch, whatever you need to do. It's quite a chunky, meaty episode that we're going to go through, and I've got a lot to discuss, and it's a topic I'm very passionate about. So I'm glad we saved this one for the extended episode. Now to myth bust this. So one thing to think about is, fine, you're getting sales, but are you getting repeat sales, or are those salespeople referring you? Because really, if they are referring you, then fine, they probably are your ideal customer profile. But if they're just buying from you once and then that's it, and they're not engaged or continuing on a journey with you, then it's likely that they're a one and done customer. And what you really want is you want the customers that are going to keep buying from you, keep upgrading, keep coming back if you have a physical shop or location, and that's your ideal customer. The other thing to think about is that depending on your products or services that you offer as a business, you may have several ideal customer profiles, which we'll go into in depth in the takeaways. Now, the reason why you really want to understand who your ideal customer profile is and why it's so important to business is because you're then wasting less time, energy, and money on marketing, branding, execution, whatever it is, because you understand who's buying from you and what, I suppose, triggers them to buy or what impacts their choices and decisions. And the reality is, if you don't understand who your ideal customer profile is, or if they already exist and you're not utilizing it, you're potentially leaving cash on the table, which again, we'll go through how you can identify who they are and how you can utilize this. So obviously, ideal customer profiles, I covered off as the first episode when I started this podcast, Engage and Thrive. And I was talking very lightly about your target audience and how you can profile them as such, but we're going to go more in depth today. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic, and the reality is I could speak on this topic until I'm blue in the face. So I do promise to try and keep it to 60 minutes. But the reason why for me, it's something that I can go round and round in circles talking about, and I always talk about, is because if you really understand your ideal customer profile, everything else kind of falls into place. And I'm going to make a big sweeping statement to the point where understanding your customer profile is more important than the branding you're doing. Because if you don't understand your ideal customer profile, how do you actually then know about the branding you should be doing, or what they would be attracted to, or how you speak to them? Your ideal customer profile is really the beginning and the crux of it all. And so regardless of what size business you are or what stage you are in a business, you really need to understand your ideal customer profile. And you should know it inside, outside, like the back of your hand, as though they are your best friend. And everyone in your business should understand it too. So your sales team, your marketing team, obviously if you're a CEO or a co-founder, customer service, and then even down to your development team, or if you run a restaurant, your waitresses and waiters, whatever it is. The other thing, which is going to sound really strange, is by understanding your ideal customer profile, you can also understand who is not your ideal customer profile, and therefore things that you shouldn't be doing, or that's a less priority for you to do, because you want to be able to also turn people off and get people to self-select that your product or service is not for them. That's not a bad thing, because then you're getting more engaged audience and the people that actually want to buy from you. And something from experience that I've seen is many businesses think they know who their ideal customer profile is, or will loosely say, this is our target audience, right? And your target audience, which we're going through in the vocab, is quite broad and generic. And then when I actually challenge that to understand, okay, so why did you make this decision? They're not able to answer that, or they're like, oh, well, we know them, or that's our gut feeling. No. This is where you really need to always go back to your ideal customer profile. And so There are different ways that you can identify who they are from segmentation and understanding reporting and analytics you have right now. But if you don't have this and you're starting out as a business, then there are some assumptions that you should make. Because again, if you started your business, product or service, there's got to be a reason for it. It wasn't just, oh, I think this will be fun to do. You must have in mind who you want to attract. You must have in mind who you think would buy from you. And that's what we need to capture, because that, and essentially all the things that you know, or that gut feeling you think you know, that all kind of folds into who is your ideal customer profile. As always, let's go through vocab. The first one being ICP, ideal customer profile. So this is a detailed description of a target customer who would benefit from your products or services, but really understanding the why they would benefit from you. Again, all of this will make sense when we go through takeaways. Target audience. So sometimes this is interchangeably used as target audience or ideal customer profile, but they're actually two different things. Your target audience is kind of a broader group of people you're looking to attract. So for example, we're looking to attract under 18s. Okay, but then your ideal customer profile is really the in-depth detail about those exact people. We'll go into this further in the takeaways. Your target audience as well, typically you may have an overview of that in your brand guidelines or when you're briefing a team or talking about a project before you go too in depth about it. Decision maker. So you may have different ideal customer profiles based on different stages of your product or service or who's involved in that buying process. And the decision maker is the person who essentially decides whether they should buy or not buy your product or service. To give you a real life example, in a corporate environment, you may have someone who is your ideal customer profile who would be using your software or your product. So you want to make sure that you're aiming and targeting them for all information. But a decision maker may be their boss, that they need to go for approval to get sign off for that product or service, or a finance person or an IT person. So again, you would actually need to think about both of those profiles of people when you're creating information. Customer segmentation. So this is ways of dividing your customers into different groups and categories. And this may be based on priorities, needs, demographics. And I don't just mean like, okay, they're based in Singapore versus they're based in the UK. I mean like, they are a business owner, they are a CEO, they are a founder of a startup. Like the more granular you can get on customer segmentation, the better in terms of personalization and understanding your customer profile. I promise you won't get bored of me repeating that. Well, I won't get bored, you may get bored, but I feel like we almost need to do ideal customer profile bingo of how many times I'm going to say this word in this episode. LTV, lifetime value. So this is the predicted revenue that you're going to get from a customer, which again, going back to myth busting, if you understand your ideal customer profile, then this should be higher. And so if you're saying you're getting sales, fine, but if you're getting a one-off sale versus getting a reoccurring sale with upgrades and referrals and everything, that customer has a higher lifetime value, and that customer is worth more to you, and that customer is likely your ideal customer. The next two are a metric you would have heard frequently, which is CAC, customer acquisition cost, and CPA, cost per acquisition. So this is how much it costs you to actually get one customer. So typically you would want to understand this to then know how much you would want to be spending or budgeting for your marketing, and you can add in another layer of understanding your cost per acquisition by platform, by channel, so by all the activity you're doing, which again you can link back to your ideal customer profile to understand what platforms make them convert the best and what platforms are the cheapest for converting them. And again, different customer profiles potentially will have different customer acquisition costs. Number one, really understand who. So grab a pen and paper if you need to, or notes on your phone, but let's go into how we actually really dig deep into our ideal customer profile. So this is really important because everything we find out or we discover or assumptions we make now will actually influence the next stages and phases of what we do in terms of business ideas, features, plans, marketing, execution, everything. And this is really important for you to actually understand everything in and out about your ideal customer profile. Give it a name, be able to like visualize that person as though they are your best friend, as though they're sitting next to you. What do they even smell like? What is their accent like? Give them a name so you can always refer back to it, so you can try and create that imaginary person so you can always think about it. The other thing with saying giving it a name is because if you are a team and you have several ideal customer profiles, which as I mentioned, you may have several of them depending on your products and services. So as a brand, you will have your target audience, but then depending on different things that you're offering may focus on different target demographics, different ideal customers. So if you have a name, then it's easier to remember, visualize, and refer back to that ideal customer profile, rather than, okay, we're offering this service and they think I think they did this and I think they did that and I think they like this. No, give them a name so you can refer it back to it and be like, Ben would do this, Ben would make that decision, Ben would interact like this. So when you're thinking about target audience, okay, and this is why understanding in depth is really important. I'm going to give you 2 real life examples of people, and then we can understand why it's really important. So if you think of King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, okay, they are both British men, and so okay, they might live in different locations, but they're similar age and probably have a similar income levels, similar spend. But actually, if you think of their behavior and what they would want and their needs and their desires and their day-to-day activity in life is completely different. Okay, they've probably got some similarities. They both have PR teams, they both have families, etc. But that's why it's really important to understand the differences, because they are the same person. If you're just broad targeting, you need to pick, are you a King Charles target demographic or are you an Ozzy Osbourne target demographic? So I'm going to go through things to capture about understanding your ideal customer profile. But what I would say is, as an exercise, and what I do with a lot of people is I say, let's think about a day in their life. So if you visualize and think about a day in their life from the moment they are waking up, where are they? What are they doing? What are their surroundings? So let's think about some things. Are they waking up in the city, or are they waking up and they're in the countryside? Do they have a partner in bed with them? And I don't mean it in a sexual form. I mean, are they married or are they just in a relationship? Do they have kids? So therefore, you could then also think about their spend and how much money or how much disposable income, or are they a stay-at-home parent, or are they, both of them are income earners, both of them go to work. And then so they go to work. So what is their job title? So then now let's talk through their day in the life. So they are getting ready for work and they're going to go to work. How do they get to work? They might get the tube. Right, so they need to walk to a tube station and get the tube. So when they walk into the tube and getting the tube, they are potentially listening to music. So are they listening to music on Spotify or on Apple Music or Amazon Music? Or are they catching up on live news, Sky News podcasts, or whatever it is? Then you start thinking about where is their work location? So are they in the city, or actually the opposite? Did they not actually have any commute and they were working from home? So their morning activity involved walking the dog, listening to a podcast, getting back, making some fresh smoothie, and then watching Sky News on the TV. Okay, so now they're logging on to work. What are their interactions? What are their working time, working hours? When do they have a lunch break? What do they do with their lunch break? Where do they go for food? What are they eating? What are they consuming during their lunch break? Are they catching up on social media? And when they catch up on social media, what platforms are they using? Are they browsing Instagram? Are they browsing Facebook? Are they posting stuff on LinkedIn because that's the only opportunity they have? Or is that their time when they can catch up on all their emails because they know they're going to get a lot of personal emails? So that's when newsletters, they would be seeing those or starring them to come back to. And again, how does the rest of their day look like? What's their evening activity? Do they go to the gym in the evening? Do they go meet friends for dinner? Do they go back and just doom watch Netflix? Are they ordering a takeaway? Again, all of these things capture, write down as a day in the life, and you can literally itemize it out in terms of like 8 a.m. they do this, 9 a.m. they do this, whatever it is. Okay, this is going to sound strange, but it'll all make sense, because what you've actually gathered from this is different touch points and interactions about what they do. Before you say, I don't know what they're doing, or I don't know if they're commuting, make some assumptions, because the whole point of doing this with your ideal customer profile is that you'll keep refining it to really understand who is your ideal customer profile. But you need to have a starting point. So you need to make some assumptions. So make some assumptions that they are using LinkedIn and Facebook, not Instagram, not TikTok, not Pinterest, that they love communicating on WhatsApp for all their family and friends, but they never read WhatsApp broadcasts, that they only check their email once a week, that they subscribe to Apple TV, that they have Disney Plus and Netflix. Whatever it is, make some assumptions. Okay, so the next thing we're going to think about with our assumptions is how they like to consume content. So when they're on those platforms or have those interaction points during their job or during their free time, what type of content and information do they like to receive or read? Is it white papers? Is it podcasts? Is it videos? Is it short form or long form videos? Again, you will be thinking about your product or service and their lifestyle and day in the life. So obviously, if you are a B2B product or service, then you would be thinking about during their working hours, what do we think they're doing and how do we think they're consuming information? So, okay, they like to read white papers and therefore they will be consuming it during these hours, or they may get emails that they catch up on out of hours. If you are a B2C product or service, you might be thinking about, okay, likelihood is during their lunchtime, this is what they may be looking for and consuming and reposting and sharing, whatever it is. And again, when you're thinking about that form of content that they like to consume, also think about who they might be following or who they might be trying to get information from. So I obviously use the reference of Sky News. Is there industry publications that people are following? Is there influencers that people are following? So again, if you are B2C and you're thinking about your day in your life of your ideal customer profile, when they go on Instagram, what accounts do you think that they're straight away going to look for or straight away viewing the stories of? Obviously, you could be saying it's family and friends, which again, family and friends, that's their word of mouth, that's their referral. Again, note all this down. So what you start forming is actually like categories of information about your ideal customer profile. So you're thinking about platforms that they're on, you're thinking about their geographical location, so physically down to the city of where they are or cities that they're commuting. You're thinking about their leisure time and their leisure activities. So do they travel? Do they like going on adventures? Do they like retreats, detoxes? You're thinking about the type of influences that they consume. So again, partnerships you could be doing. You're thinking about who is decision makers, again, B2B, what's their job, who might be involved in their decision making in their job or decision making in their personal life. If they have a partner, do they need to touch base with their partner about booking a holiday and so deciding on the budget? Is it that actually they're a stay-at-home parent, so the other partner will be paying for it and so therefore the other partner is the decision maker? All of these things are all these different types of categories of information about your ideal customer profile. Then you want to think about what motivates them and what's their pains and gains. So if you're thinking about your product or service and then you're thinking about how you can relate it to them, what do you offer that they might be looking for? So what is their need that isn't being fulfilled that your product or service could? Or have you identified something that is annoying for them or as an information or as a product or service that they would like? That's a pain, and therefore as a gain, it's what your product or service can offer. Write that down. That's a pain and gain. What's the motivators? So a motivator might be something like money might be a motivator. So a lot of times people don't have the budget. They need to save up to buy something. If you're thinking about a Rolex, okay, people might want a Rolex and there may be no need for it. It's a desire. And actually a motivator will be they're getting a new job or they have a change in lifestyle or they've just got a divorce and so they buy a Rolex. Again, what is the motivator? Are there different life stages that could be the motivator? So it could be getting a job, getting a divorce, buying a house, whatever it is. Again, thinking about different stages of their life. Going back to what does their life look like? Do they have a family? Are they single? Whatever the situation. And then other things you may want to think about is your values as a business, and are there values that you pride yourselves in that actually you think your ideal customer profile, it would be really important to them. For example, accessibility. Are you looking at a disabled demographic? Sustainability, is it that your demographic is really conscious about the environmental impact of things? So actually, you know that's something that's really important to them. almost down to the point, if you had to like score this of 1 to 5 of like your values or your unique selling points, where do you put them on? What would they give out of 5? Now, obviously I've given you this whole example in terms of you're making assumptions that you don't know who your ideal customer profile is and that you were a startup. So this is the first time you might be going through this. You don't have to be a startup doing the first time going through this. You may be an existing business and running through this exercise as a first draft. And then what you might do is then want to validate your ideal customer profiles. So you might then want to take this data and information and then validate it and check with information that you already have. So checking your Google Analytics, checking your sales that you've had, and any information you've captured in your CRM about your sales. Or you may run a focus group where you may get some people together and ask their day in the life experiences, again, based on an assumption of people that you think would be your target audience, but refining more. You may send out a survey. You may have an email mailing list that actually you want to send out a survey and ask them for feedback and information about things that they interact with or what they do in their lifestyle, or even down to your values. How would they score it? What's important to them? Ask for this user feedback. Or again, on your social content, have a look through your social content, have a look at the engagement, the comments, have a look at messages you've received. Again, try and use that information to feed back into your ideal customer profile. And what I'm going to reiterate again is, don't forget, you can have more than one ideal customer profile. You may have one per product or service, or you may have them based on active and passive. So I've lightly touched on this before, and what it means is an active ideal customer profile is someone who is actively looking for a product or service similar to yours, and so would be looking for direct competition comparisons and then making a decision and buying pretty quickly because they are in a market for a new fridge. Okay, whereas a passive ideal customer may be someone who needs to save up. Let's use the example of the Rolex, or they want to buy a new Mercedes. There may be a lot of contributing factors to when they could afford to buy that Mercedes. Is it based on when they're going to trade in their car? Is it based on if they land the new job? Is it based on when they have a baby? Whatever it is. So your passive ideal customer is actually someone that's going to take a lot longer to convert. But again, don't forget about them when you're thinking about your ideal customer profiles, because just because they're not buying instantly doesn't mean they're not your ideal customer profile. Again, thinking about the active and passive, another touch point you may want to capture is thinking about how quick they would make a decision to buy your product or service. And again, this can depend on age and stage, how much your product or service costs, location. So again, if you're actually running a restaurant in Japan and you're trying to target British tourists, they're not going to buy it straight away because they're not even in your country. They need to plan a trip and a holiday. They would actually be passive ideal customers because they're going to watch all your content, see your information, and then when the time is right, they will book that trip and they will come to your restaurant. Number 2, profiles drive performance. So as you can obviously already gather, the information that we've captured about our ideal customer profile is really in depth, and we have got a lot of information that we can actually use. So now we take that and then we start tailoring things that we're doing in business and in marketing. It's not only about marketing and the sales team, okay? So this is where I was saying about naming those ideal customer profiles, because everyone getting more familiar with them can also then flex that information depending on what department they're in and what they need to be using it for. For example, you've got your brand book, but you need to create some landing pages targeting your ideal customer profile called Ben. Now we know that Ben works in a corporate job and is only going to consume the information on his mobile, likely on his commute home, okay? Right, we've already made some assumptions that landing page needs to be mobile first. We also know that landing page likely needs to be quite light touch with key information where he can either request further information or schedule a demo or buy now, or even send himself a notification to share that information with his wife. But what you start doing then is actually making those decisions based on your ideal customer profile. So let's again refer to Ben being that profiling. We would then be thinking about what tone of voice we use. We have our brand book tone of voice, but how do we flex it to appeal to Ben? Whereas we've got another landing page that actually is going to be for Susan. So we may flex our tone of voice slightly different for Susan, because Susan is a remote worker and she actually works overnight. And so she sleeps most of the time in the day. Again, her information and how she consumes it may be completely different. She may be looking at landing pages on desktops. And again, now if we go into the actual assets that we're delivering on social media, time of day and type of content, it will be different for Susan versus Ben. So you can see this is where you start shaping and tweaking tone of voice, visuals, landing pages, assets, type of content, time of day, platforms. And this is also where it feeds into, I've said before about you don't need to be on every social platform. So again, as a business, understanding your ideal customer profile and again, active and passive and who's going to be your best converting ones, you would then pick which platforms are the most important to you to get your message there for them to convert. Then you might want to start thinking about those time of days, and when you're posting content, you also want to start thinking about your customer service. So actually, if we're thinking about Susan and we're doing a huge campaign targeting Susan and she's a night worker and she's not actually online really in the day, why would you have your team responding to messages in the day when she's asleep? You've missed the window of opportunity. You need to make sure you could have someone responding to messages in the nighttime. Or if you don't have the ability to have your team working those set hours that you've made assumptions for, enable a chatbot so Susan can still get the information that she would want as though your team was online. And then again, if you're thinking about your sales team actually following up with Ben versus Susan, what were those pains and gains that we spoke about in our ideal customer profile? And therefore, what can your sales team use as those pains and gains as their unique selling points when they're talking to Susan versus Ben? Because there will be a difference in their needs and their requirements and what they're looking for, and also how they're getting that information. So again, if we're going back to Ben has sent you an inquiry and he just wants quick, fast information in his corporate job, if you try to ring him from completing that lead form, he's probably not going to pick up. Whereas if you send him an email back or you sent him a WhatsApp, he'd probably respond when he has time on his commute home. Whereas with Susan, if she had the ability to schedule a call of when it's suitable for her, because actually her shifts could be changing in the next few weeks. Again, thinking about those user experiences from your ideal customer profile. So then if we go back to thinking about how they're consuming content, when they want to be spoken to, how you're responding to them, the tone, the colors, the branding, the emails versus the WhatsApp message, whatever it is. Now you're thinking about partnerships they actually want to do. So again, we covered it off, who are influencers or who are other profiles that they may be viewing on social media or interacting with or sources of information. Now you think about and utilize those as partnership opportunities for your business. So if, for example, you know that Ben will always get his source of information from this industry publication, but your name is never in that industry publication, is he going to trust to buy your product or service? Probably not. However, if you could get some kind of coverage in that industry publication, whether it's an article write-up, whether it's a collaboration guest blog, whether it's an interview or paid for email blast, whatever it is, he would then see your name and build that brand recognition with the industry publication and the trust of your brand. And again, we can go further in depth about the different touch points and interaction based on which stage of interaction your ideal customer profile is having with your brand. Is it the first initial brand awareness, they don't even know who you are? Or are they at the stage of actively wanting to buy? So therefore, what's those touch points you should be doing? And again, you can actually then plot out all those day in the life activity interactions we were talking about based on the different funnel conversions. So what would be a brand awareness idea, what would be an engagement idea, and what would be a retainment idea. So could you be doing outside billboards on the commute on the tube, or versus you're posting on social media, versus you're running a live, versus that WhatsApp message that you're following up about? Again, there is so much to think about it, and you can go so in detail, which is why I'm saying that actually ideal customer profiles can drive performance, because it sounds like I'm talking about lots of different variables, lots of different things going on. But if you really understand and can imagine Ben sitting next to you here and how he's interacting, you can actually make quick decisions about what you do. So you would then think, okay, Ben's never heard of our brand. How do we want to target him in the first instance? That's your brand awareness. Then we know Ben has been seeing our brand likely for 2 to 3 months. How are we going to retarget him? Or how do we start having a conversation and engaging with him? Okay, this is then your strategy around that. And it's not just one person. It is the likes of Ben. Then Ben has now inquired, how do we keep him engaged? How do we continue that to actually close the sale? Does he need to save up to buy something? So again, he's in our pipeline, in our funnel, but he needs to go back and have a conversation with his wife about, can they afford to book that holiday? Can they afford to do that upgrade on their house? Can they afford to whatever it is? So actually now, what are your engagement platforms and information that he already knows who you are and he's already engaging? Because also this is likely when he will be talking about your brand, so he will become a word of mouth referral for you, or he may be wanting more details and more updates because he's getting really excited about buying your product or service. How do you keep him engaged? And then once he's bought your product or service, how do you retain that excitement? How do you keep him coming back to buy more? How do you get his constant feedback to know what else more you can give him? Are you sending him surveys? Are you actually like serving pop-ups within your online software to get his feedback and input from new features that he's using? Which again, I'm going to loop all the way back around again. That a lot of that I'm talking about is like attracting your ideal customer profile, but actually from a business strategy point, when you're making decisions about rolling out new features, rolling out new menus, rolling out different updates and different phases or events you might go to, again, link it back to your ideal customer profile. Is your ideal customer profile going to that event? Would your ideal customer profile like that menu choice? Are you actually overcomplicating it and they wouldn't understand what you're trying to do and they just want something really basic in terms of information or a brand name that you're choosing to call your new product or service? It doesn't make sense to them because it's too smart. Sometimes you can become caught up in your bubble, like an internal bubble, and you can forget your ideal customer profile. That doesn't make sense to them. So every time you're making those decisions or thinking about those next strategic decisions, think about your ideal customer profile, which is why I'm saying it's important to name them. It's important to understand everything about them as though they are sitting next to them. Like you could be asking them, Ben, do you like this menu choice? Would you have this? Would you host a party? Would you invite your friends? Okay, let's go back to influencers and actually how you partner up with certain people. What you need to think about is those influencers that you want to partner with, who are their target audience and who is their ideal customer profile. And you can also ask influencers, by the way, about who their target audience is. And you should then see, is their target audience the same target audience as you? And then if they can give you more details about their target audience, that actually then aligns with your ideal customer profile. So again, they may say, oh, my target audience is 18 to 25s. Okay, but you need more details. 18 to 25-year-olds, what's typically their job? What's typically their behavior? When are they typically online? Again, they'll have all the information. So as an influencer, they're not going to just randomly go online at 8 in the morning because that's when they feel like it. They'll go online at the time of day when their target audience is on, right? Which you would then think about like, okay, is Susan going to be online at 12 p.m. when that influence is online? You know, because you would be thinking about her in mind and you're thinking about the influencer's target audience too. Do those audiences match? Is that the right target audience that's actually going to buy from you from a long-term perspective? To give you an example that's quite topical, a lot of people recommend you create lead magnets to get people to sign up to your email mailing list. Okay, so a lead magnet is something that you may create to say, here's a checklist of what you need to post on social media. And you're like, yeah, I need that checklist. So of course I'll give my email. And then what happens is you get that checklist. You're like, yeah, cool, this is really handy. Use it a couple of times, get a few emails from that person. And then you're like, why am I getting these emails? Or unsubscribe, not relevant to me. So actually that lead magnet has created this false audience because it's not the right engaged audience and they've just signed up to get your lead magnet, but actually they're never going to buy from you. So there's a whole discussion around, should you even be doing lead magnets, right? Because unless you have the right targeting for your ideal customer profile and you're just giving out a lead magnet or posting or hosting somewhere online like, hey, here's a free downloadable as long as I get your email address, Is that in the right space that you're getting that ideal customer profile? So you'll see a lot of people using a platform called Gumroad, or people may give away freebies on Fiverr, or people may give away freebies on Facebook just as organic content, and then put loads of money behind as an ad to get loads of interest. Now, unless that targeting is really, really specific to their ideal customer profile, you've just got a whole bunch of people signing up for your email marketing who are not relevant and who are not going to convert. Another thing to think about when we're talking about profiles drive performance is actually something called lead scoring. So if you have a CRM, which is your customer relationship management, so where you're storing all your information about your customers, what you can actually do is think about your ideal customer profile. So Ben, Susan, and then we have another one called Leslie, okay? And then you may think that actually Ben is our best converter. Ben really pays us the most amount of money. He's got the highest revenue of the lifetime value. Susan, she's a passive one. She's a slow burner, but Ben converts quick. Ben makes decisions, and Ben refers people as well, okay? You can add in different layers into your lead scoring in your CRM based on your customer profile. So therefore, when your leads are coming in, you know which leads to almost address first. So let's say you had 100 leads in one day, okay? How do you decide which ones to look at first? Obviously, you may just go in okay, who submitted a lead first and respond. But actually, if you've got it based on your ideal customer profile, you know also the length of time it takes for them to convert, that can then score your leads, so you know which are the ones you need to address first. The other thing to think about with your lead scoring and your CRM is if you're understanding your Susan versus your Ben, and you know Susan's going to really take 7 months to convert and Ben's actually going to convert in 3 days. Again, understanding your focus and your energy of what you need to be doing and what you could be potentially automating to keep Susan engaged, keep the information going, and just having touch points as a team to interact as and when you need to, because you know she's going to need a lot more information, a lot more hand holding, which you could do from automations. And then when it's the right time, you actually have your sales team engage with her. And then you have Leslie, who is just a random rogue one thrown in and who's actually not relevant, just trying to get information from you, just trying to do a competitor match to what you're doing and understand who's the cheapest product on the market. Again, could you use that to have automations in your CRM, on your social media? So I regularly talk about a tool called ManyChat, which can actually respond to some of these inbox messages, direct messages. Again, if you've got the likes of Leslie who just wants a straight comparison of information, ManyChat can actually serve that. You don't need to worry about, as a customer service or sales team, responding to Leslie. Another thing I touched off in the myth busting about understanding your customer profile is also understanding your reverse customer profile. So the people you're not looking to attract. And this is where you can also use it for when you're making decisions about features, menus, when you go live, where you go live, locations you go live in, locations you roll out your product or service, anything like that, anything to do with your business, any iteration, literally everything you do, every decision you make, you need to be thinking about your ideal customer profile, and then also think about the reverse. So the reverse being, you want people to be able to self-select, to decide that actually they can't afford you. That's not a bad thing. Why engage with each other's time and waste each other's time if they can't afford your product or service, or they just want instant information, the likes of Leslie? You have to think of the reverse, and you also have to think about that in terms of, like I was saying, a physical location. So do Ben and Susan exist in those locations? If they don't, why are you going there? Because then that's your reverse ideal customer profile. That's not a priority, that's a lower priority. Again, when you are then deciding things as a business or as a marketing strategy, and you need help prioritizing with what you do with marketing campaigns, or how you spend your budget, or what you do next, you know, what you go after, all of this will feed in to be like, okay, that's high priority because that's Ben, that's Susan. That's low priority because that's the reverse of what our ideal customer profile is doing, or that's a low priority because that's the likes of Leslie and that's just a sucker of information. Number 3, revisit and refine. So your ideal customer profile is not static, and it's never going to stay the same. And I know that might seem really bizarre to say, because you're like, well, I started the business based on this ideal customer profile, or this is what I have in mind. But things change. Industries change. Politics influence things that change. people's lifestyle change. There are so many external factors that we cannot control. If you think the likes of COVID, how many businesses had to pivot, or how many businesses were impacted around something that they couldn't control, and actually user behavior from the ideal customer profile completely changed. If you think of people that may have been doing something pre-COVID versus post-COVID, their mindset may have changed completely as well because of what happened. And so your ideal customer profile has changed. You as a business may make some decisions which may change. You may outsource things, you may change your pricing, you may roll out new features that actually you realize, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother demographic that we didn't even think about, but we found an opportunity to target them. Again, your ideal customer profile would then change. You may be thinking about your active and passive ideal customer profiles. Actually, that may change really quickly. You may realize that your passive ideal customer profiles actually in the long term generate you more revenue. So therefore you want to spend more money going after them. And again, the reason why I'm saying about really understanding active and passive and understanding how long it takes to convert, and like I touched on in the vocab, the cost of conversion. So how much does it cost to acquire Ben versus acquire Susan, or for Ben to buy one product versus Susan buying 2 products, is because that's where you would make strategic decisions about who you go after, and also how long you then need to plan things back in advance. But that needs constant refining, and that would change all the time, and that you need to think about, refine, monitor, report on. And again, that's not even considering you may have different products and services and different ideal customer profiles. You could be talking about 10 ideal customer profiles, which, oh my gosh, that's giving me a slight headache thinking, oh my gosh, that's so many to think about. But if you have 10 completely different products and services, that's what you may have. So you may think, okay, there are 3 that we are really gonna focus our energy on because those are the 3 that make us the most revenue. You need to revisit those regularly. And I'm not saying like, oh, each week we need to refine our ideal customer profile. No. At least once a year, that's a minimum. That is an absolute minimum. You should be looking at that, because that's when you're kind of setting your next year business strategy, marketing strategy, budgets of what you're trying to do. But realistically, every quarter, I would say have a review against Ben and Susan and look at your business and marketing performance. What's the plan for next quarter and what are you doing? And it's really good as well, because if you're in any leadership meetings or trying to make some decisions, you can challenge any decisions that's actually being made as a business to be like, does this relate back to our ideal customer profile, Ben or Susan? Is this a priority for Ben or Susan, ideal customer profile? And obviously having that ideal customer profile shared as a team, then you can all think in the mindset of that ideal customer profile to be like, actually, yeah, you're right, they wouldn't be going to that event, so why have we got that plan for Q3? And realign what you're doing, how you're making decisions. There's other things around seasonality. So actually, Ben may be really high revenue for you in the summer months because he wants to book a holiday, and so he's got the most amount of money to spend, and so that's actually when you're going to get the most attention from him. But actually the all year rounder is Susan. So again, those are things you need to be thinking about. And obviously linking it all back to as well with your branding. So if you're thinking about your ideal customer profile, your overall target demographic, your overall target audience, what's your customer experience of every brand touch point? So from seeing your social content, to getting your email marketing newsletter, to your autoresponder, your website experience, your onboarding, the offboarding, the request for testimonial, the review, everything around it. How does that feel, and how does that align or not align with your ideal customer profile? And like I said, I could go blue in the face of saying this is why it's so important to understand your ideal customer profile, because everything you do as a business should be influenced by your ideal customer profile. And you should know exactly how they would respond to any information. So when you're making those decisions about even down to a font that you're using on a page, like I said, is it accessibility friendly because you're going after a disabled demographic? Is it actually that it needs to be dark mode because Susan is working in the night? So you need to have the ability that anything you're doing on your website or on your platform has dark mode because actually she's working night shifts, and so she doesn't want a bright white website and bright white platform. She wants dark mode. But like I said, make assumptions about your ideal customer profile and then refine it. So the first iteration is probably going to be quite raw, and you're going to make some assumptions that potentially are completely incorrect. That's also when you can do A/B testing. So I've covered off in other episodes around why you would do A/B testing of things, but this is like one of the reasons why. If you're making some assumptions about your ideal customer profile and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if they actually spend more time on Instagram or more time on Facebook, then obviously use that as an opportunity to post on both platforms, but see which you get more engagement on. And I don't just mean like, oh, you get loads of likes. I mean comments, direct messages, sharing of posts, saving of posts. And again, if you're posting video views, you can get all the views in the world, fine, but that's a bit of a vanity metric. You want to know that they're doing something with your video. So are they commenting? Are they saving it? Are they sharing it with their friends? Are they sending you a message about something that was in your video that they want more information on? And then again, A/B testing for your website. So a lot of people, their first touch point for your website wouldn't be your homepage. Your homepage would be if they potentially know your URL and directly type it in. Okay, so taelon.co.uk. But actually, a lot of times they're going to a website from a referral link. So that referral link may be what's in your bio on your social channels, what's a piece of content you actually shared on one of your social channels. So you've posted on LinkedIn directly to this blog, or they've got an email from you and then you've shared a link to that podcast episode. So you have to think about that user experience from those touch points. Again, Ben versus Susan, where are they going to as their touch point to get to your website? And therefore, what is their experience after that? So they've landed on that blog or they've landed on that podcast. Now what? If there's no prompt to do anything else, or there's no other information to book a call or read more blogs, or have you seen this episode, or a pop-up to say, stay in touch, sign up to our newsletter, the likelihood is they'll read that blog or they'll listen to the podcast and then leave your website. And then you've actually lost an opportunity to capture your ideal customer profile and get them to buy and do something with the information. But what happens next? What could you do to get them to next engage with your brand? So again, think about that user experience. Think about how they would be searching for information. So do they want to search for information, and literally, do they want a search function on your website to search for information? Because they just click through in a blog, they don't really know who you are. Again, going back to that funnel point, and therefore they want to find out more. Could you make it really simple? On the end of your blog, could you add information about who you are as a business? So then they've got that information, and then it says schedule call to find out more. Again, when you're scheduling that call, is it that they're submitting a lead form, or is it Susan, she can actually schedule a call at the time she wants? All of this, like I said, revisiting, refining, and that's when A/B testing can be really, really helpful. But with all that revisiting and refining, just remember, data is your friend. So for each refinement you're doing to your ideal customer profile, have the data to back it. So is it that actually you had more conversions and you've got that data and information in your CRM that you can use and go, okay, everything that we did at that event worked really well on getting the bends. Okay, and even have a label on the CRM of that target ideal customer profile, the bends, and have those people labeled up as the bends. Because again, you can use all that information of how you target the information back to them on a personalization level. Is it that on your Google Analytics, you can then see your user behavior flows of where people are going for the next part of the information on your website? So again, you can refine your user experience. When you're sending out newsletters, have you tested the time of day to see the best open rate? And then take it one step further. It's all fair and well having an open rate, but actually what's the engagement on that email? So again, this would come down to depending on what platform you're using to send out the emails. Because if we go back to the example, if Ben is opening the email on his commute, is he actually reading it on his commute? Or is he starring it or saving it or flagging it to go, I need to come back to it and read it later? So maybe you send out an email on the Monday, but actually he doesn't do something with it until Thursday afternoon. Again, understanding that conversion and how long it takes, and therefore do you then need to have a follow-up social content information going out on Thursday, because you know he's engaging with your brand, therefore what could he also be seeing on social at that time when he's reading your information? The other thing that obviously I mentioned is how could you also ask your existing audience or existing customers to help you refine your ideal customer profile. So ask for customer feedback, ask for reviews, ask for information, And a lot of times you may actually be asking, and it's based on recall data. So you may be saying like, oh, how did you hear about us? And they're going, I think it was Facebook, but actually they did a Google search. That's recall data. And so in your feedback as well, you may think of different types of information, quantitative versus qualitative. So you may be saying like, oh, how easy was it to find information on the website? What information? Or how was your interaction with the team? But actually what you could be asking is, did you feel like you got a response in a timely manner? This is when you may be thinking about, okay, your sales team needs to be responding within 2 hours instead of 8 hours. Are you likely to refer our product or service to a friend? That can link into your actual scoring. Would you be interested in a referral program? So if we started one, what would you like as a reward? Would you like cashback? Would you like a few months free added onto your subscription? Would you like the money donated to charity? Again, ask them what they want. Ask your customers. And this also will help you then actually work out with your existing customer base, who is your ideal customer profile in which different segment, who are your Bens and who are your Susans. And then again, you can use that information to go, okay, how much revenue have we had from those customers? What is the lifetime value of those customers? How can we then be also retaining them? What can we be doing for the next step of their customer journey? Like I said, there is so much to this, but hopefully you're starting to understand the crux of why this is so important and why I'm so passionate, honestly, about people understanding their ideal customer profile, and to the point where you should be able to rattle it off to me. I shouldn't ask you who your ideal customer profile is and you're like, well, I think it's this. You should be like, their name is Kelly and they live here and they do this and they love interacting on that and they holiday here and their pastimes are this, and give me everything. You should be able to give me everything. So then if I was to challenge you on something about why you're doing it from a business perspective or a marketing perspective, you could say, okay, because we know Kelly would do this. I know I've completely thrown in a whole new profile person, Kelly. But again, it's just validating everything that you're doing relates back to your ideal customer profile, which drives performance, which drives conversions, which gets you more money, gets you more revenue. The other thing as well is when you're refreshing these ideal customer profiles, right? Involve teams, involve different team members as well to feed in their information that they gather, because it's not only your sales team that will have that insight, it's also you may have your CEO or your founder is actually going to events and interacting with people and getting feedback. You may have your developers are understanding different user experiences and different user needs when they're actually creating features on your platform or on your website, and so therefore they may say to you, oh, we've noticed that people are doing this, actually we could add this in. It may be something that you're not even aware of or you don't even know exists, and they can feed in that information. Your marketing team may say, we've noticed this on social media, or we've noticed our competitors are doing this and we think that Kelly, Susan, Ben may like that. Involve the team, because also the team needs to know how the ideal customer profile is evolving. And so don't necessarily take someone's literal information, okay, because you're the sales team, you know everything. No, everyone's got their different touch points of how they interact with the customer, and so therefore they've also got their own touch points of their feedback. Obviously up to you as a business how much of each person's information you want to feed into evolving your ideal customer profile. And again, this is an opportunity where you may identify different things that you want to A/B test based on different teams' input about your ideal customer profile. Okay, so ideal customer profile bingo. How many times did I mention it? That is the 3 key takeaways about your ideal customer profile. And I really, really do hope I've explained it well enough that you understand why it's important and what you should be looking to do. And even from just the basic principles of understanding information to influence your marketing and business decisions. Now, I am going to throw you in a bonus item, which is related but not related, and something to kind of lead you as a food for thought. So it's all fair and well us thinking about our ideal customer profile, but what about our ideal employee profile? So we all spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how we actually get customers and clients into our business and how we potentially retain them. But what about the time and energy thinking about getting the right people into your team and retaining those right people? So just to leave you with a thought, start thinking about also your ideal employee profile, and actually all those things we were talking about with their values, their interactions, how they consume information and everything. All of that actually leads into your employer branding. I'll probably do that as a whole other extended episode around employer branding, but I just want to leave you with that thought around ideal employee profile, IEP, which I had a look, and it doesn't really look like people are using as an acronym, but it's something that I think will evolve and will come up, and something that we need to consider, because if you don't have the right team in place, how are you getting all these customers? As a wrap up, just because you're getting sales doesn't mean you need to ignore your ideal customer profile, because you could potentially be getting more sales if you understand your ideal customer profile. So use this as your sign to start creating your ideal customer profiles, and then start doing your iterations and see what the impact is to your sales and to your business, and see how it could impact the decisions you make in business and in marketing. The other thing to remember is it's not just one and done, and it does need iterations, and it does need refreshing, and it does need an evolution. But understanding your ideal customer profile is really important for all aspects of business. Thank you for joining me for an extended episode of Engage and Thrive with your host Taelon, and see you next week.